everybody, how are you? Shoshana Mizell here. Welcome to the Mama Shoshana channel. I'm so happy you're here. I have a great subject to talk about today. And before we start, I just want to ask you if you could please subscribe, like, share, and of course comment. Today is a great subject, feeling of being lonely versus the feeling of being alone. So we're gonna get right into that. So stay tuned, be right back. Okay, so let's get right into it. So excuse me if I look down, I just have a lot of notes that I don't wanna miss anything. So the feeling of being lonely versus the feeling of being alone. And again, this is all just my personal feelings that I'm sharing with you. I'm not a therapist. I'm not an expert. I'm only an expert at what I've been through and how I feel about it and how I've dealt with things. I just want to give you a quick background of some of the things that I've had to deal with. Is post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, panic, agoraphobia. That's a lot. And I'm sure there's many other people out there who might have been having to deal with one or more of those problems. And although I have really grown and healed from a lot of those, it still comes up every now and then. So here we go. So the one thing that I heard, actually, I was listening to a TED Talk today, and one of the questions that they suggested you ask yourself is there anything that you're lying to yourself about? And I feel that is such an amazing question. The second question was, and this is something I came up with myself, is the feeling of being alone or lonely interrupted by one's level of intelligence or ability to think deeply? The third question is a remedy for loneliness a spiritual connection? And the last and fourth one is depression connected to feeling alone or lonely? So a couple of things came up for me. The first one is if there is anything that I'm lying to myself about. So, being with yourself or being honest with yourself can be really, really, really scary, especially if you have a sense that being true to yourself and being honest is going to wind up leading you to not being in the situation you're in now. If you're in a situation where you're not, in a healthy partnership with somebody, or you have a fear of being alone or lonely, and so you want to stay put so that you don't have to face that. Those are some of the things that I think can make me feel lonely, is when I'm not honest with myself. And sometimes it takes time. It takes time. It's hard to be honest with yourself if you don't understand yourself, if you don't know what you're feeling. So that is where therapy comes in. That is where meditation and taking care of yourself, slowing down, keeping a diary, all those things can help you and have helped me to be able to be more honest with myself. Next thing is feeling alone or lonely can it be interrupted by your level of intelligence or your level of being able to think deeply? Because sometimes I know that I have felt alone or lonely. Sometimes it was easier for me to intellectualize it or to analyze it rather than feel it. And that's fine. Everybody's going to go through a whole myriad of different ways of coping with feeling alone or lonely. And you kind of mix and match different things that you're going to do to be able to cope with it, to be able to get through it. But I know that what I was missing when I would intellectualize or I would try to think logically about why I feel lonely or why I feel alone. And that kind of kept me disconnected from the emotional aspect of it. It's scary to feel your feelings. It is, especially when you can't identify them. Being able to just be still and allow myself to go through the uncomfortability of feeling lonely or feeling alone without having to rationalize it, intellectualize it, or analyze it to death was a big part of what helped me to learn to be able to emotionally soothe myself. And 3 is the remedy for loneliness, a spiritual connection. So that is definitely a very personal thing. And when I say spiritual, I'm not talking about religion, although that can mean religion or God for some people. When I talk about a spiritual connection, I think to myself of me, myself being aware of myself, being aware of my surroundings and other people, and then feeling an awareness of a third thing. And that is where I receive so much comfort and the sense that I'm not alone. And it's really a choice when, there's something else out there that you can't see. It's a choice whether you want to believe it or not. And there are different times in my life where I chose to believe it before I could even feel it, because it was either that or I feel like I was just going to go crazy. I just could not I could not cope with life. And when you're in that place in your life where you're in a fork in the road and it's either you do something self-destructive or you just stay still and just kind of ask the universe to please help you. So there's not, you can't I couldn't buy my way into not feeling lonely or alone. I couldn't even be around tons of people. And that would not remedy me not feeling alone or lonely. So, of all the things that I have around me, of all the people that are out there, what if I don't have them? What if I am somewhere where I don't have my belongings or friends or anything? I get to take that relationship that I create and mold, whatever it is, with something outside myself and something outside anything that is, like I said, human, at least person, place, or thing. Outside those 3 things, I can take that spiritual connection with me anywhere. And it just always makes me feel so safe. And it does now as well. And then the 4th thing is depression connected to the feeling of being alone or lonely. I remember going through depression quite a few times in my life. I feel like depression, especially when I couldn't quite put my finger on what I was depressed about. It was kind of just like a free floating feeling of sadness. And, when I would have people around me that didn't understand me or were depending on me, it was a very isolating feeling because they just didn't understand what I was going through. I looked fine on the outside, yet I just couldn't move. I couldn't find the energy or the desire to want to do anything. And so being misunderstood, people not understanding you, people not believing you, people not, thinking that you're just being lazy or it's just an excuse, that is a very lonely feeling. It was for me. And when I would describe certain feelings, if whoever I was talking to didn't understand them or they felt uncomfortable, they couldn't handle it, and then slowly they would kind of push away from me. And that was a very lonely feeling as well. So the feeling of being lonely versus the feeling of being alone. The sense of feeling alone in the world is a pretty ominous feeling. And I felt that most of my life. I felt a lack of connection, a lack of safety, and the most important thing was I felt a lack of self-reliance, where I would be able to feel like, you know what, Shoshana, you have me. I'm going to take care of you. And I just didn't have that. I did develop it with a lot of hard work and therapy, but I didn't have that. And it was just a horrible feeling. Feeling lonely is a lot different than feeling completely alone in the world. For me, loneliness can sometimes feel like boredom, or feel like you want to just have that physical touch with somebody, but there's nobody around. Think you're feeling lonely, and you call up a friend, you say, you know, let's hang out. I really kind of feel lonely. I'd really like to have company. And you have that company, and your sense of loneliness goes away. Then that is a very temporary, loneliness. But if you're feeling lonely, even if you have somebody around you, it could be something deeper. It could be that there's something missing in you. No matter how many people you have around you, if there's something empty inside you that only you can fill, then I think that is what led me to constantly go after the next relationship. So I'm going to close this book. My notes are over, and I want to share something quite personal with you that I contribute, and I had therapists and professionals kind of validate that for me, that I contribute to my feeling of being completely alone in the world. So I'm going to read an excerpt to you from a book I am writing. I think I've been writing it almost a year now. It is a memoir of my life. And one major experience I had at a very young age was in about 1968, when I was 8 years old, and I had spent 3 weeks at sleepaway camp. I couldn't wait to come home. I miss my mom so much. And this is what happened on that day. There was no color anywhere, no black, no white, just gray. It was summer, but I felt cold and outside my body. It was a pretty silent ride in the car as we drove into New Jersey. At this point, my mom had remarried, and my sister and brother, stepdad Lou, and Mom and I were living in West Orange, New Jersey. But my mom was not heading there. We were going to Grandma's house, which was cool with me. My Grams, Pauline Rifkin, the cutest, sweetest, most loving grandma. This fact always perplexed me. My Grams was so sweet, and my mother was a very sick and suffering woman. My mom said that I would sleep over Grams, and she would pick me up the next day. The afternoon seemed to go by as usual, snacks, drawing, and some TV. I think I know how Dorothy felt in The Wizard of Oz as her house was spinning. The difference is that Graham's house was only spinning on the inside. The next day, as I was sitting at the kitchen table, Graham started screaming. I saw my grandpa somewhere, blurry in the background. My sister was acting so odd. She was upset, but in a weird way. I was to find out years later. I had heard mutterings of death and my mother. Of course, I was only 8, so I couldn't connect the dots. I just quietly sat down with a crayon and a piece of paper. Worlds were colliding around me, police entering the house, Graham screaming like a wounded animal, and I wrote a letter to my mom. I love you, Mommy. Love, Shoshana. And I added flowers and hearts. I calmly walked over to my sister and asked her to give the letter to our mom. What she said next was to be the Day of the Dead. My mom is gone. She is dead and is never coming back. My mother, in fact, was dead. From the time she dropped me off at Graham's house to the next morning, she took her own life by overdosing on sleeping pills. I never saw my mom again. This permanent state was unfathomable for me. I experienced 3 deaths that day. Never to see my stepfather Lou again. Never to live with my sister and brother again from that day on. Never to see my room with my toys and all the things that were familiar to me. You would think that the hard part was over. No, my dear readers, it was just beginning. So, that day, that type of shock that took me many, many years to be able to actually even start feeling, led me to have a very deep, dark, black hole within my soul that I tried every which way that you could possibly think to fill it. And I just want to let you know that there is hope, that I experienced many other traumas besides this one, and I feel blessed to be able to have overcome them. And as we go on, I will share more and more with you about the things that I went through, the dark times, and the triumph of being here, being strong, and knowing that no matter where I go on this earth, I will never be alone. So, thank you again so much for sharing this time with me. Just wanted to let you know that you are loved, that I'm doing this for you, for myself, for the world, and I just feel very blessed to be here. Thank you again. Please subscribe and come back for more Mama Shoshana time. And I will see you soon. Mwah.